Hey, everybody. This is the first Game Developers Conference podcast live. I am Chris Graft, editor-in-chief of Gama Sutra, and I'm here with Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm the news editor and associate publisher at Gama Sutra, and I'm really weirded out by doing this on video. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird. We don't usually, we see each other, just like in meetings and stuff like that. But now it's like I'm actually talking to you. And
the art of face-to-face conversations it's rusty for me.
Well, let's just talk each other through it. Yeah. So this is actually episode 12 of the podcast. So that means it's like we do one a month. It's like 1 year.
I've been doing this for a year.
This is 1 year of podcasting. So let's just do the hey, how's your show going?
It's going great. Been very busy. It's amazing that an online event can kind of capture that same kind of I'm constantly behind feeling as the regular GDC does for me. I'm bad at scheduling, so it's on me. But it's about the same kind of heart rate throughout.
Yeah. The thing too, though, is that if you're running late for something, it's not oh, I'm in Moscone West and I need to be in South.
Yeah, you don't have to power log up an escalator.
Yeah, and then show up at the session completely sweaty and stuff. So, although I'm getting a little sweaty from this, but
it's the anxiety of podcasting, live podcasting. We can't edit this. I don't know about that.
Right. Yeah, this is edit free. So if you ever listen to GDC podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and
YouTube when we feel like it.
Yeah, YouTube when we feel like it. Google Play. You can go check us out there. But yeah, you'll find out just how much editing goes into this.
No, we always 100% flawlessly execute our sentences.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's always first take. So I'm also noticing that there are people in chat, which I didn't even consider that in the swap card app. Hello, everyone. This is totally a recording. No, it's not really. This is actually live. So hello, everybody in chat. This is totally new for us. Thanks for coming on here. Yeah, I'll try not to look at that and look at that too much. So we actually have an amazing guest here. Do you think that we should?
Yeah, we have no GDC announcements to do because GDC is upon us, so we can get right to the meat.
No, there's no morning announcements this time. So we can just, we got you here. The content marketing worked.
Let the content reign. Let's introduce a guest.
The marketing is done and not the content reigns. Okay. Now here we are. We do have a guest, and we're excited. So I'm going to introduce here. So you ready?
No edits. Do it live.
Okay. Our next guest is lead games user researcher at the Able Gamers charity. He has a bachelor's in psychology. I don't have that. Was a research assistant in the Lieber Center for Schizophrenia at the New York State Psychiatric Institute for 6 years. That's a mouthful. And it sounds prestigious. He's an advocate for accessibility in the game industry, and he's led talks, workshops, and consultations with tech companies that you might have heard of. Google, Oculus, Avalanche, Activision, and there's also Microsoft, where he worked. He did some consulting on the Xbox Adaptive Controller, which is a super cool thing. So let's go ahead and bring him on right about now and unmuted. Let's welcome Greg Haynes.
Yeah.
that was an intro and a half. I don't even know what to say after that. I should just leave right now. Thank you so much for that intro. That was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. That's what we like to do.
Get all the fanfare right away, poppers in the background.
Yeah, and then just bring the person on and just make them super duper humble.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. My ego's expanding as we speak.
I know you seem very cocky.
Did we miss any notable achievements? Anything else you want to kind of brag about a little bit?
I mean, I think you got it outside of my social security number. I think you got my entire history.
What is that then?
The closing comments, yeah.
All right, so like accessibility, that's a topic in games now. It's a very important one. You personally, what prompted your interest in game accessibility? Why are you such a big advocate for that?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, for starters, just coming out of the pharma research realm, I really wanted to combine my love for gaming and my love for psychology and helping people essentially find well-being through gaming experiences. And I happened to meet the founder and executive director, Mark Barley, and our director of community, Craig Kaufman, at a convention a few years ago, and we just hit it off. And when they were talking to me about game accessibility, I was like, "This is it! Like, this is the way that I can combine those two loves." Like, at the end of the day, knowing how important games are to me, and seeing the impact that gaming has made on my life and the connections I've been able to make, whether it was content creation or making like lifelong friends. I felt that if there's a community out there that's unable to experience that for whatever reason, and I can change that somehow, then it was my duty and my calling, if you will, to indulge that.
Didn't get into it in your intro, but how long have you been with Able Gamers now?
I've been with Able Gamers since the beginning of 2018. So 2 years.
You've done a lot in like only a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, you have to factor in pandemic time too. So it's been roughly 15 years. If you factor that in. I'm running up my pension right now. It's looking good. It's looking good for your boy.
Well done. Now, before we get more into it, sure. there is a lot of talk about accessibility in games, but it's kind of a word that's thrown around a lot, and maybe not everybody quite understands what it means. So as an expert in this field, what does accessibility mean to you? How do you define that?
I think accessibility, you're right, because you definitely see accessibility used in the context of like, is this game something that the consumer will enjoy? But in terms of game accessibility and essentially opening up the gaming sphere for people with disabilities, we're talking about being able to remove barriers to play for anyone, right? It's not even just people with disabilities. It's anyone who might have a barrier to play. And it goes from being able to boot up a game and being able to just interact with the game. And we'll talk more about that later. And also being able to encounter the challenges that you encounter in a game and being able to surpass those challenges to make progress, to ultimately have a fulfilling experience, an experience that you want to have. So I guess in short, game accessibility is really being able to break down the barriers to play as you engage with these game worlds that creators are creating.
I feel like I'm stealing this phrasing from somewhere I read recently, but there's like the idea that game design is like creating barriers for people. This might have been like something I read in your bio and then just like repurposing it. But like, so how do you kind of coach people through or work with like devs who think accessibility might be at odds with like creating challenge or something along the way?
Yeah, that's a huge issue, because what you're talking about there is like the perception of game difficulty, right? Like,
yeah.
We've seen that debate play out time and time again just in the past few years of like, what makes this game, like, I want to make this game hard. Like, does that mean it's not accessible? And there's sort of a misconception, I think, within the community that anybody asking for accessible features wants their game to be easy. And I think that's sort of a disservice to the experience that anybody who plays a game wants to have. And that's that we all, and including people with disabilities, including what I've seen in the research that we've done with Able Gamers, the disabled community does want challenge in their games. They don't want their games to be easy per se, but challenge is relative, right? Like, what's hard for me might not be hard for you, right? So at the end of the day, it's being able to tune the challenges that they encounter in games in order to be able to surpass those barriers and again to make progress. So when it comes to game difficulty, simply talking about easy mode or having a mode that's explorer mode or whatever it may be, it's not the entirety of the conversation. It could be part of it, but I think game difficulty and challenge really amounts to having the options to tune challenge to the way you need it to be, so that you're getting the right amount of I guess, resistance to your progress, but not so that it's just this thing that you're not able to enjoy. Because what's unique to games versus like, let's say like web accessibility, right? Like web accessibility, you don't want interaction with the website to be hard, right? When you jump on Amazon.com, you don't want to be, you know, and you put like, I don't know, like anything in your cart. I'm going to say Capri Suns because I was just talking about that today. I just bought some Capri Suns, get that in my cart. I don't want a challenge when I order some Capri Suns. I don't want like an Amazon, you know, gremlin to pop out.
Well, then maybe
like,
you're not a true gamer.
And you know, we laugh about it, but that's kind of the argument that's out there, right? Which is like, you know, you're not a gamer if you don't want some sort of challenge. And at the end of the day, it's relative. Some people want different things. And what we're talking about when we talk about like game accessibility in the context of challenges, being able to create the environment, the challenge environment that you want to create. And that doesn't mean that the current means of game difficulty don't exist, right? Like you can still have your hardest hardcore modes, but how I play doesn't affect how the next person plays and how the person after that plays. So in terms of coaching, you know, through coaching developers in terms of the conversation around difficulty, it's really about presenting options for people. You know, we kind of have this concept in the community where, you know, people want to marshal over the way other people play. And it's like, you know, are you in my house playing the game with me? Like, how do you, what does it matter to you how I'm playing the game? Now, again, when you're talking about things like multiplayer, right? Like that's where, you know, you might think, well, what if it's easy for this person and I'm playing on the hardest mode or whatever? And I'm like, well, there's optional matchmaking. There's things where, and we call that house rules in the Able Gamers community, you know, where you can tune the rules for online engagement so that you're playing with other people who want to play the same way that you want to play. So there's definitely a multitude of answers for something like that. But I think game difficulty is a contentious conversation to have. And you know, it's one of those things where it's like let people game the way they want to game.
Do you think it's fair to put it like this? Like it's about giving access to a wide range of people with different abilities, giving them access to the challenges that the game designers intended? ?
I mean, I don't think, again, you know, I don't think game developers need to change their vision per se, right?
That's what I mean.
That's exactly what you're saying, right? Like you can keep the same world that you want to create, just allow people to tune the elements of it that they want. Because ultimately, if, you know, we look at the current landscape of game difficulty, right? Let's say you have your standard easy, medium, hard, right? If I want to play it on hard mode, I'm gonna play it on hard mode. If you're gonna play on easy mode, you're gonna play on easy mode. And the interesting thing about it is, you know, I always kind of talk to people about this, which is as a gaming community, as a community, we accept whatever definitions a developer has determined for easy, medium, hard. We accept it outright. Like we just choose one of those and we just go with it. And we don't really question what that is, right? Because easy in one game isn't necessarily easy in another game. You know, there are different factors at play. And what we're asking here is really to have the ability to edit those things. Like you see like sliders in games like The Last of Us Part 2 had difficulty sliders or challenge sliders. Tomb Raider is another franchise that lately has been doing those difficulty sliders that allow people to tune what aspects of the game they want to be more difficult or less challenging. And ultimately, like it, again, if you want to default to easy, medium, hard, which those games also have, they also have those default modes that are developer sort of determined. You could jump into that and you can play those modes if you want. But if you want the other way of going about it, then you can do that too. And as a community, like we always see talks about options. Like we all want options, consumer options. Like it is consumer friendly and frankly, it's good usability to give a user options in terms of how they want to engage with the content you're presenting.
No one's going to be hurt by like having more options and more ways to choose how they want their experience to be.
Except the so-called marshals that I mentioned earlier. You know, people that are trying to govern how I want to interact with the game.
This is kind of like what you guys have done with the accessible.games. Is there a fancier name for that? Probably that I'm getting wrong.
No, that's the name of the site.
It's a really cool portal. I covered it when you guys launched it at first, and there's just like so much like free accessible information about accessibility there and how devs can like roll that into their games. How involved were you in the creation of that? Is it like your baby or?
Is it my baby? Wow. Now we're getting into legality
really
and
deep.
child support questions. I mean, it is our team's baby. Did I have a role in it? Yes, I had a very big part in at accessible.games, including the accessible player experience design tool that we created. It's based on user research, based on this program. Research from this program we have called player panels, which is an assemblage of people with disabilities, players with disabilities who have provided feedback about the way they want to play with games. And we turn those into to design patterns that speak a lot about what I'm speaking about right now, where it operates on an access level, which is getting people around what's called the player feedback loop. So basically, access barriers stop people from interacting with the game and taking out information from the game. And access solutions would help you navigate those barriers. And then on the second level, challenge, which is essentially what I mentioned earlier, helping people progress through the game, helping people not just encounter some of the challenges they might have in like combat or progression, but also emotional challenges, right? Like sometimes there might be content that you can't engage with. A great example of that is, you see gore settings in games. You see games that sometimes allow you to turn off mature language. So anything on that level operates in the challenge sphere, and anything that allows people to get through that cycle, get through that player feedback loop, and subsequently progress through the game is what we would call an accessible player experience. So all of that is on accessible.games, including anyone who might have a disability who plays games, who wants to be part of the player panels program. Currently, we have registration halted due to COVID-19, but we usually have a portal there for people to be able to register and sign up for that program, which is currently sitting at about 600 players.
Nice.
And right now, thank you. And right now in the works, we have a research portal that we're trying to set up that'll show some of the research studies that we've already come out with, and just have it housed there in one spot so that any developer can come and check out some of the work we've done.
I do want to go over here and look at chat real quick, because some people are using the question function. And let's ask this one from Misha Samoradin. And sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. How much do you advocate for accessibility with people with autism and Asperger's? Is there funding opportunities for those wanting to create experiences for this audience? Do you have any insight on that, Greg?
So just so I'm clear, funding opportunities for anyone wanting to do development for neurodiverse folks. And what was the other part? What was the first part of the question?
How much do you advocate for accessibility for those types of situations?
Sure. So I mean, at the end of the day, we kind of have to get to a point where we're respecting and acknowledging both the physical side of disabilities and also the cognitive and mental side of disabilities as well. So we very much advocate for not just addressing some of the physical barriers that people might have to play, but also some of the cognitive barriers, some of the mental health barriers that folks have to play. We're speaking about challenge. A lot of the sort of interactional barriers that get in the way of progress usually happen for a lot of folks who have mental health difficulties or are neurodiverse. People with physical disabilities experience that as well, but that is something that certainly operates for folks who have those mental difficulties, as well as access issues too. Sometimes you're looking at a game, you're just like, there's too much information here. I might have a learning disability and I might need to turn off some of the information because it's coming at me too much. There's too much coming at me at once. So I think very much so we should keep in mind that it's not just about people who have physical disabilities. It's also about folks who maybe have a disability that you can't physically see or comprehend without talking to them. In terms of funding opportunities, that's a really great question. I don't personally know if there are any funding opportunities like grants. I assume the person is talking about. I don't know if there are any funding opportunities in that respect. That's not really my area of expertise. But I can say that there's a sizable population of people with mental health difficulties that could benefit from games being more inclusive in that respect. That's even a population that's represented in our player panels program, because it's important for us to cover the full landscape of disability, which is very much inclusive of people who have neurodiverse diagnoses and mental health conditions.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm a small game developer, I don't have a lot of time and resources, uh, like, and I'm just like, you know what, accessibility just isn't a priority for me. Do you have, an argument, that counters that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those tough ones where you hear it, you kind of rage inside because it's like, like
Sorry.
there's always time, you know what I mean? But I understand where they're coming from, and to that I'll say, that's part of the work that as an organization we're trying to do, where we're trying to inform the community about ways that they can move accessibility to the earlier stages of development. Um, the accessible player experience design patterns that I mentioned earlier, they're available for free on accessible.games/APX. It's something that you can view freely. And what it does is it presents accessibility problems that people might encounter in a problem solution format. So let's say, for example, we have a design pattern called second channel, right? So one of the problems or the problem for second channel is people can't take in the information you're trying to relay to them through the particular modality that you've chosen, right? So that's a lot of words. And when you hear that, you're like, what is this dude talking about? But a great example might be like the information in the cutscene, right? Let's say like, voiceovers in a cutscene, right? So that's one modality. You're presenting a cutscene visually, and you're presenting the audio in that cutscene through, one means audio channel. So a way to articulate a cutscene, or at least the dialogue coming from a cutscene, another modality or channel would be to have subtitling. That way, there's now a visual modality in addition to that audio modality. When we're talking about visual, sometimes we'll see some game trailers, like Everwild, I think, had a game trailer where it was completely in audio descriptions. So like the trailer was presented visually, but the whole thing was audio described. So someone who has a visual disability could perceive the entire thing, from that perspective. So what those design patterns do is they identify a problem like that and they present a solution, which is present information through additional modalities. So by tuning a developer's thought processes that way, it helps them think about game mechanics that they might want to implement in their game early on, and some of the barriers or problems that people with disabilities might encounter. So the idea there is you're able to think about disability without thinking about specific diagnoses, right? You're able to come out a few levels and think, okay, how might someone who has a visual disability deal with this feature that I'm including in this game? How might somebody with an auditory disability encounter this feature that I have in the game? How about a physical disability? And so on and so forth. So that was really important to us to be able to create this resource, because currently a lot of the industry is guideline focused, and guidelines they're not a bad thing. They're really useful for checking once you've created a game, right? Like it's really helpful to be like, okay, I've got this feature, check mark. It's great. But the difficulty with guidelines is they don't really tell you how to do it or how to do it well, right? They don't tell you how you're supposed to implement a feature. It just tells you that you should have it. There are best practices that are, guidelines can be inclusive of, but ultimately they get so robust, right? Like, current guidelines right now, like they sit at, you're talking about dozens and dozens of options that you have to make sure are in your game without telling you how to implement that.
It becomes more of like a checklist than like design decisions at that point is what it sounds like.
Right, exactly. So with APX and the way that we're trying to shift design thinking is we're trying to think of the person first versus the technology. We're trying to put the human being first. And essentially with APX, you're thinking about problems or barriers that people might encounter, and in the process of developing your game, thinking about solutions that help you ideate but don't tell you how to design your game. It tells you what barriers people might encounter and allows developers to think reflexively, right? And ultimately, what it does is it encourages generative design. So in terms of smaller developers, that's sort of one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the financial aspect of it. People with disabilities in the United States have about $21 billion in discretionary income. right? That's like after they've paid their bills and they're like, yo, this is party time money. What do I have? What can I spend it on? It's $21 billion. And to put that into perspective, that's more than the Black community and Hispanic communities combined. Black community has about 3 billion. The Hispanic community has about 16 billion in discretionary income. So there's a financial factor to that as well. And with 46 million potential players with disabilities in the United States, you're talking about a huge player base that you can tap into as a smaller developer. And there are other examples of independent developers, including accessibility in their games. You know, you've got Celeste, Infernium, Way of the Passive Fist, Hypnospace Outlaw, Hyperdot. There's like a bevy of games there now, including that. And ultimately, the industry is changing. The industry is changing. And if you're not able to adapt, you know, people aren't going to be able to play your game. And ultimately, you know, that's sort of the decision you have to make. And it's tough to think about it this way, but not every single game is always going to be accessible, but we have to start somewhere. We have to start thinking about things like subtitling. We have to start thinking about things like remapping, because as with all technologies, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. And there are too many people being left out to not even think about starting somewhere so that we can ultimately progress the industry to the place we need it to be.
I know with The Last of Us Part 2 had like that amazing array of just accessibility options focused at so many different areas of need. And they talked about how it started with the Uncharted game that I don't remember the number of prior to that. And they're like, oh, these are foundations we set up by building accessibility options into this game. And then we were able to iterate on them and just build through feedback. And just from already having those foundations laid, just accelerate this into this really cool thing.
Right,
so like just getting out there and doing even the basic, so you can kind of learn and iterate and do more later on, seems to be beneficial.
Yeah, and you know, to that point, I mean, you know, we talked about the Player Panels program, which a developer is free to submit a project to Player Panels. If you need feedback from players with disabilities, again, we have 600 players you could submit a project to. Let us know what type of feedback you want to get from your game. The only thing we ask is that those players are compensated for their time. You know, we have to set a minimum rate for the amount that players are paid. We don't take anything from that. It's completely you paying the players that are involved in it. And, you know, that minimum rate, you know, is at minimum, it's $10 for 20 minutes of work or $25 for an hour of work. So
if you guys pay people for stuff like that, because there's a lot, free labor.
I mean, it's not even us paying them. It's the developer that can. But, you know, when it comes down to it, right, like, let's say you create a survey or a gameplay play session that's an hour long. And you're like, all right, I want to get 10 people with disabilities to give me feedback on their gameplay experience, right? $25 times 10 people is $250. You're talking about $250 for accessibility feedback at minimum, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, and again, going back to the numbers I said to you before, you're talking about tapping into $21 billion of discretionary income. So like you can make a small investment now to make your game more accessible. Yeah. And ultimately you'll iterate and become better at that going forward, right? So, and again, the space is changing. Also, people our age, right? Like, I don't know about you, but like I'm 30 years old. I want to game until the angels start singing for me. Like I'm hopefully angels. You know, hopefully not pitchforks, devils and pitchforks. But you know, I'm trying to play for the rest of my life. But we all know that as time progresses, you have age-related disabilities, right? And even things that we don't often think about as disabilities, right? Your sight might go, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe your reflexes aren't as good, right? We're a huge gaming generation. Mm-hmm. When we're older, we want the industry to be able to cater to us. I mean, I don't want it to be Zoomers that take over the gaming space, and I'm like, hey, what about me? Like, I'm a millennial. I'm trying to game too. Games are all I got. I'm broken. I got debt. I need games. You know, so like. It's important for us to think about accessibility in that respect because the industry is changing.
Yeah. And I'm 40, so I've got like a decade on you. I'm going to be hitting those. I'm going to be needing some of that stuff.
I'll tell you right now, you shocked the hell out of me when you told me you were 40 just now. Like I hit it well, like I internalized it.
Oh, you know what I do? I found out the video option in Zoom. I can touch up. And, yeah, I'm actually just...
The gray hair just goes away.
The hair appears.
Man, I
I'm
need
gonna
whatever
go to-
lotion you got, whatever you're using, man. Let me get some of that.
It's called half Filipino, I think. But I'm going to go to chat real quick for Becky Grady getting a decent amount of likes on this question. So earlier you said no one's going to be hurt by more options. And Becky points out in UX, though, there is often a balance of not making it too complicated or some maximum where it could become too overwhelming to customize it all. How do you make sure you're providing the needed options without going so far that it's too hard to navigate? That is a well thought out question.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And ultimately it comes down to player testing. You want to bring in players that you can source this information with and obtain data. As a UX researcher, as a UX designer, you know that feedback is going to be the way that you obtain this information. And when it comes down to the menus and options that people are navigating on, you're right. Like that can become overly complex very easily. I know, for example, like sometimes, you'll jump into like an MMO and the amount of menus you're presented with, it's like, fam, like I feel like I'm doing my taxes right now. I don't know what's going on. Like there's a lot of terms and numbers here. So, the way to really navigate that is player testing and user testing. Ultimately, I can't tell you what the right menu settings are, but I sure can tell you that if you source about 5 to 10 people and you ask them questions about their experience navigating the menu, chances are you'll see certain issues rise to the top. You'll probably see the same 5 issues rise to the top in terms of how people are navigating things. And ultimately, when you source those questions, when you do that research, which also takes time and also takes resources, not trying to downplay that, but when you do that, when you take that time and you do that research, that's something that's gonna rise to the top. And ultimately, player testing and user testing, that has to become a bigger part of the industry right now. It's necessary. Because you're putting out a product and you don't know how people are going to feel about it if you're not testing it.
Yeah. Just to kind of segue this into this question from Gabe Pofcher, which probably is related to what you just said. They ask, what do you recommend for projects that may not have even $250 for accessibility feedback? Is that just, going to having people do you a favor and play test your product, your game or something?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is, first, there are resources like accessible.games to check out. The other thing I'll say is there's plenty of news articles and things about games that have a good accessibility features that you can check out. Can I Play This is a great website that talks about game accessibility in various games. And you can use those games to help inform how you're going to design your game. I'm not trying to make it seem like this is an easy thing to do. But when I talk about there being $21 billion in discretionary income with people with disabilities, there being 46 million people with disabilities, in the U.S. with the World Health Organization estimating that there are 2 billion people on the planet that identify as having disabilities. So that's not even counting people who don't identify as having disability. You're talking about a huge population that is going to want access to these experiences, especially as we move to almost 3 billion players on the planet that play games. You're bound to be overlap with people who have disabilities as well. So, really and truly what it is it's a value proposition. And, when it comes to not having the resources to do something like that, I totally understand that. But, doing things like betas also help to get feedback as well, because you can see how people are interacting with your game. But ultimately, time and research, in the same way that you've studied to do, to learn how to design a game, accessibility is something that it's here to stay. It's happening, and unfortunately, there are folks that have now realized that and are lagging behind. But we have things like the CVAA, the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. It's a mouthful. That legally says that certain people need to have access to these experiences. And other countries around the world are also starting to adapt things like that too. So the landscape is changing from a legality perspective. It has changed from a financial perspective, and the numbers of people that you can potentially have access to has increased as well and continues to increase. So the world is changing, the landscape is changing, and hopefully we'll be able to do what we can as an organization, I mean, Able Gamers,
Yeah.
to alleviate that. And that's part of the research that we're doing to try and put out there too, to change that landscape, because we know it's hard and we know it's difficult.
So what we need to do now is, well, we're gonna, okay, all right, how are we gonna do this? We'll switch over, we're gonna switch over to basically a word from our sponsor, a pre-recorded interview that we did. And, but when that's done, Greg is going to come back with us, and there's going to be 2 more Gamma Sutra editors.
It's really engaging banter about current gaming.
Yeah. No, but we can keep on talking to Greg too after that. So if we could roll that beautiful bean footage. Is that, no, it's like the
word.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and switch over to that right now, and we'll be back in about 10. Up next, we'd like to welcome one of our sponsors, Burak Wardal, CEO and co-founder of Istanbul-based hyper-casual mobile game publisher Rollic, purveyor of chart-topping games including Go Nuts 3D and Tangle Master 3D. And before Rollic, Burak was at mobile advertising company Ad Colony as head of growth and client solutions in charge of EMEA and Latin America territories. Hey, Burak, how's it going?
All good, Chris.
Good.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about Rollic and what you do there?
Yeah, actually, Rollic is an hyper-casual developer and publisher based in Istanbul. So we're working with third-party development partner studios to develop hyper-casual games. And also we have an internal studio that we produce our own hyper-casual games. And we are in Istanbul, and we are controlling an ecosystem of almost 1,000 developers and designers.
Oh, wow. And what do you do there personally?
I'm the CEO, so I'm managing on daily basis, I'm managing business, publishing, and product teams of the company.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us about some of the more successful games that Rollic has published? Yeah,
actually, until August, we've published 30 games in total. And I think almost 20 of them became the most downloaded game in the United States. And actually in Q2, in the period of April, May, and June, Rollic developed the most downloaded top 2 games of United States App Store, Go Nuts 3D and Tangle Master 3D. So I think those are the latest big ones. So I can tell those as an answer.
Yeah, great. And I feel like this genre is kind of off of a lot of people in the game industry's radar. So can you define what you think a hyper-casual game is?
Yeah, actually, in the industry, there are a lot of talks about the genres, and there's they're creating new genres like super casual, hybrid casual, ultra casual. We mainly don't believe those a lot. So we believe that there are certain rules of game design that you can apply to the mobile game you have at that moment. But of course, hyper casual is a big and popular genre. So I can define an hyper casual game as a simple mechanic giving a huge fun for the society, and also the main point of an hyper casual game is it should be played by everyone without any genre, gender, age, or anything. It should be a mass appealing game and a successful one.
Yeah, can you describe the gameplay of like Go Nuts, for example, so that they're kind of like very tactile seeming, right?
Yeah, actually, the fun moment of that is untying the knots, right? So there are tied knots, and you're trying to untie them with the simple sort mechanic you use. It's same with the Tangle Master. So in the Tangle Master, you also try to break the ropes and try to have a clean level end. So it's a very simple fun, but it's very satisfying when you achieve the win in the level. So it's a very simplistic mechanic and a simplistic game design, but gives a huge satisfaction and fun to the user. So that's actually that's what a successful hyper casual game is.
Yeah, it's almost like therapeutic. Now, Rollic has seemed to gain a lot of traction pretty quickly as, Rollic is still a young company. So what do you attribute the fast growth to?
Yeah, actually, we are an 18 months old company, so we are very young in terms of the history of Rollic. But I think the biggest value over there is in hyper casual, many of the publishers are acting like performance marketing companies, and many of the developers are acting like outsourced development. But in Rollic's community, we have a huge gaming culture. So I think the value of success, and without like measuring the timeline of the company, I think the biggest value there is having the proper game component product culture in whatever you do in your business. So if it's hyper casual, if it's casual, it's the same for every game production. So I think the reason Rollic succeeded this fast is the hirings and the culture of the team in terms of gaming, not like performance marketing or outsourced development. We have a big gaming culture, and in every day in Rollic's office, the only topic is the games our team is playing or we are producing actually.
Mm-hmm. And you work very closely with the developers, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you are collaborating on games with them, what are some of the design principles that you adhere to when you're guiding your development partners?
Yeah, actually, we are partnering our developers from brainstorming level of the idea to the scaling part. So there's a huge story over there. We are fast, so we are preparing a game to its launch mostly in 1 month maximum. But in the meantime, we are covering a lot of details about the game together. Like in the first prototype, we always try to coach them in terms of how many levels do they need to test the game properly, what should be the exact mechanic of the game, or what should be the progression look like when we are producing the game. After games show a potential in the metrics we test, then comes the updates. Updates are like bigger schedules for the game that we are giving the feedbacks to the studio in terms of every detail of the mechanic, every detail of every level we produce. So we are trying to be as clear and as transparent as we can in terms of the idea they are producing. And also, but the thing we don't coach or don't tell them is the execution quality and the development they do. So that should be coming from the studio as a know-how and as an experience. But the rest of the game, the design parts, like level design, like progression, like characters, like the general color palettes of the game are all coached by Rollic to its studio partners during the production period.
Mm-hmm. And Rollic also is involved in something interesting called the Rollic Hub. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, so we know the physical value when we're producing games together with our partners, especially in hyper casual, because these games doesn't have like detailed game design documents. They don't have a big background. On that moment, you think of an idea, and if your studio partner is a quality partner, they will be probably able to develop that mechanic in like 3 hours, right? So when you have those partners in your office working every day with you, then you are able to try more mechanics, new designs, etc. So something comes up to your mind, you talk on that moment, and you develop and play it right away and check the feeling of the game. So Rollic Hubs is the idea of getting product, like keeping the indie soul during production, but also doing a very successful business together with our partners. So we are providing them shared offices in our Istanbul HQ and in Ankara, the capital of Turkey, and soon in Izmir, the third biggest city. And we are producing together with our studios on daily basis. And this wood shop, it was a huge release from our game hub, and also latest release Fast Driver, which is the first person driving game of hyper casual history, was also a game from our game hub.
Very cool. And just to wrap things up, for game developers who are looking to get into this hyper casual mobile space, do you have any advice that you could give them?
Yeah, actually, I think first advice is always courage. So don't be afraid, but don't confuse of producing prototypes with releasing successful games. So in hyper casual, producing prototypes looks relatively easy compared to really releasing a huge hyper casual title. So every day you need to do better execution, better ideas, and you need to continue testing. And in terms of your partners, choose your partners very well. If you're a developer, please choose a proper game artist or a game designer as a partner, or vice versa. If you're a successful game artist, find a good developer partner that you can pair with. You don't need like 10 people to produce a proper hyper casual game. 3-4 people will be enough. And I think choosing the right partners is the key over there to make a sustainable and future-proof ecosystem in hyper casual industry.
That's great. Well, Burak, thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck.
And thank you very much, Chris. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And we're back.
And found 2 more people somewhere.
There's more people here now. We decided that Greg was too lonely. He needed to be confronted by a total. So we're actually.
We don't have repeat guests.
Yeah. We've got the normal hoodlums from Gamma Sutra. Bryant Francis. Hey, Bryant.
Hi, I'm not a hoodlum. I'm a highwayman.
You're all good. And then Alex Owaro.
Hello,
Did
I'm
I pronounce
dressed
that correctly?
You nailed it, and here I am in standard hoodlum attire. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to keep on talking to Greg because whatever about you guys.
All right, later.
No, but Greg, first of all, thanks for sticking around for the bean footage. If you're
My
still
pleasure.
here. And
My
then,
pleasure.
but you announced something very developer centric, which I think would be appropriate for here. Your
Yes.
D-pad is what you call
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah. So the
that?
D-pad initiative actually launched today. Stands for Developers Promoting Accessibility and Diversity in the space. And really what D-pad is about, it's about giving people free access to the Able Gamers Practitioner course. So that's a course that we developed to fund our mission and also to teach developers about accessibility. Normally the course is priced at $2,000 for a seat. It's a 2-day course, extensive course that goes into how to use the free tool that we present on accessible.games, how to win the sort of arguments around accessibility in your respective companies, how to establish a culture and community of accessibility in your companies, and ultimately to just coalesce around more accessible design thinking, generative accessible design thinking. So D-pad is something that sort of emerged out of our need to do something in the community to bring improved inclusion in the space. This year in particular, we've seen so much happen from a diversity perspective that really reflects how far we need to go, how far we've come, but also how much further we need to go in order to have an inclusive safe space, not just in the gaming community, but in the larger environment as a whole, and on our planet, in our country, in our planet.
Mm-hmm.
From the notion that Black Lives Matter, from the truth that Black Lives Matter, not even the notion, the truth that Black lives do matter. The fact that there are trans folks experiencing extreme violence and losing their lives because of their chosen identity. The things that we've seen women have to endure in the gaming industry from a discrimination and from a just inappropriate behavior standpoint. We realize that the only way to really change the industry is to start changing it on the developer side of things, to start changing those environments and ultimately create cultures there that are inclusive, and hopefully make games that are inclusive and representative of the people that are playing these games, people of color, people with disabilities, women, people that are members of the LGBTQIA community. So with D-pad, we want to create an initiative where we can essentially have developers who are interested in taking that course and learning about accessibility, developers from diverse backgrounds, such as the one that I just mentioned, apply to this course, to apply to this program, to be able to join up and get a free session of the course. So if you head over to ablegamers.org/dpad, you'll find the application there. You can submit an application, super short. We want to keep it concise because we realize people about to spend 2 days with us potentially doing this course, so we don't want to have you spend too long on the application. And yeah, just apply and join up. You have nothing to lose if you're from a marginalized group. Apply. We definitely want to see you, and we definitely want to hear from you. And from my experience, as a Black man in this environment, I realized that there's so much inequality and hatred towards groups that don't deserve it. These are things that we can't change, and even if we could, we wouldn't. It's who we are. And I say we when I speak about my Blackness, and obviously I don't want to speak for other groups that I don't necessarily identify as, but I know that we all are the way we are, and we embrace that, and it's the way it is, and we need to make sure that the community opens those doors for those people to feel welcome. This community is an amazing community, but it has an ugly side. The gaming community has an ugly side to it, and we got to stomp that out. Like, it's enough is enough already. So we got to get rid of that. And I hope that DPAC can start making that progress towards alleviating some of the biases that are in the game development space, and sort of improving the numbers so that there's less of the sameness that we currently see in the gaming environment, so that other voices can be elevated and other experiences can be shared and told.
Is there even anything else to be said? We've got like 8 minutes left, and
really
that is straight up mic drop, and that's beautiful. And
thank you.
It goes, just the fact that the concept of accessibility goes beyond just a lot of people think, helping disabled people play games, which that's part of it, but it's woven into all the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, and we want developers who have disabilities to apply to this program too, because that's another stigma in the space right now, which is, we don't know how to hire people with disabilities. And I'm like there are plenty of people that are out there that have disabilities that want to be developers or want to work on the gaming side of things. We've seen Cherry Thompson get hired at Ubisoft, which is an amazing hire. Hi, Cherry, if you're listening.
She's in chat, yeah. So yeah.
Oh, what up, Cherry? So Cherry, is an example of bringing folks who have disabilities, who are vocal about their disabilities, who are expressive about their disabilities, and the experiences that the game industry needs to start changing their minds towards. Hiring people that have these experiences. It's an important part of making sure that this community can grow. And I'll be honest with you too, it benefits these companies who are trying to make money to have other people in the community. You know what I mean? It's not an altruistic thing, I know, to include other people, in order to grow your business. So it doesn't hurt anybody but bigots, honestly. So
more perspectives make better games.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better, and I hope to see that. I hope to see DPAD, be the starter for that in terms of what we could do on our end. We're not Nike. We can't give out $100 million towards a towards a specific movement, because ultimately anybody who decides to support our organization, they've chosen us to be custodians of the money that they've given us. And we feel as custodians, a great way to support our mission is to train developers from diverse backgrounds in accessibility to ultimately help the community that we set out to by starting Able Gamers and also to grow the space in terms of a diverse, inclusive perspective.
Hey, real quick, just sliding in with a tiny correction. We referred to Cherry in the third person a couple seconds ago. Cherry is one of our great GDC speakers, yes. And they use they, them pronouns.
Yes.
So just quickly doing that.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that and make sure, this live episode doesn't contain any bad feelings after this is done. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
My apologies, Cherry, if I did do that. I appreciate you clarifying.
Thank you, Triskel, for asterisking that in chat.
Yeah, awesome. And on the topic of hurting bigots, I saw a great talk today at GDC Summer that is a different tack in a different sphere, but I think it's sort of similar in some key points. Brenda Romero gave a talk this morning. I don't know if anybody caught it, on hidden histories of women in computing. And a key point of that talk, which is going to be available on the platform for everyone to watch on demand if you missed it, is that women are not fairly represented in leadership roles and in creative roles, both in tech and in games. And one of our key arguments was that, having a mostly male-dominated industry, a mostly white male-dominated industry, creates a lot of situations where women are physically uncomfortable, whether it's cold offices or, badly designed games or whatever. And so she basically made a big call for gender parity, making a good case that, like, basically the more diverse teams you have, the better games they're going to make, because they're going to bring their own perspectives and their own experiences to the work. And it seems like we're seeing a lot of calls for that across the industry, and it's great. Let's just keep doing it. Let's just never stop.
Yeah, we gotta keep that same heat that we had, when we saw everything happen with George Floyd. When we saw the brutality that was shown towards a human being, and we all started recognizing that. When we see all the people in the industry being outed for their behavior towards women, like that heat that we have right now about trying to improve that, like if this hasn't changed a year from now, we got to have that same fire, because every time we let up in terms of appealing for more equality and diversity, we take 5 steps back, and enough is enough. I'm tired. I know I'm tired, and I know that I'm not the only one who feels that way. But at the end of the day, there's a generation that's coming after us that needs to see a better world, and the generation that exists right now, we deserve a better world. So we got to keep pushing in that respect.
Absolutely. Did you guys see any fun talks about hurting bigots?
Yeah.
There was Wolfenstein the other day.
It was very specific.
Nice.
If you want to read about that talk, you can find a write-up by Alex on gamasutra.com.
Promotion.
Nice one. We do work for gamasutra.com, don't we?
A website with a name.
Yeah. I do. We didn't really talk too much. We have a little bit of time left, like four minutes. I'm wondering, like, working with, like I mentioned right at the beginning, that you work with these big companies, some of them large publishers. What do you get from those? Like when you're consulting with them, are you kind of like surprised at the culture, or are you, are they usually receptive? How does that usually go for you?
I think it certainly varies.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if I have to be honest, I think companies, it's not that they're receptive, it's that they're somewhat apprehensive. Like, for example, personally, I don't identify as having a disability. And I like to make that clear when I talk about the community, because I always say, like, I speak about their needs and the community as opposed to me. So I don't necessarily identify as being part of that community. But even myself, it took me a long time to get comfortable with asking questions that ultimately serve the knowledge that I'll need to have in order to benefit the community I want to help. And I think, at least with the companies I've worked with, I can't speak for every company out there, but at least the companies I've had, the pleasure of working with, it's more so that it's a lack of knowledge, that really creates sort of apprehension. And to that, we try to offer a safe space where you can ask questions about the community, to further inform yourself, because ultimately, like, asking questions with respect, obviously, we're not talking about, like, being rude or bigoted in how you address the community, but asking questions about the experiences that we try to share with these companies in order to improve their approaches to accessibility. In terms of common questions we might get, we got a lot of questions about, like, what should I do first from an accessibility standpoint? And, like, that's a tough question to answer. I can say, from the players that we've polled, for the players that we've talked to in player panels, that a lot of the people ask for things like key remapping. A lot of people ask for proper subtitling. That includes increasing text size. That means, or decreasing text size if you need to, or turning it off completely. Having backgrounds for those subtitles, being able to change the color of both the text and the background to match what you want from a contrasting standpoint, including the speaker name as well, if there's multiple speakers speaking in a game. We see a lot about recoloring, so colorblind options, being able to turn off sort of the background noise that might be coming from a game, or flashes that might be coming from a game. We also see a lot about timed actions, so things that require you to have quick reflexes, QTEs being a big one, quick time events. So it kind of varies, and ultimately, I'd say start somewhere, and continue to iterate from that respect. But we get a lot of questions. It's hard to think of them right now. We definitely get a lot of questions in that regard.
No, and we've got like 17 seconds left.
I'm watching the timer go down.
Perfect.
Yeah, like, perfect. People can probably go to what resources, what website, ablegamers.org.
All right, let's make this quick. ablegamers.org, accessible.games. Follow us on Twitter at ablegamers. You can follow myself on Twitter at Greg J Hazy, J's and Jaguar. And go to ablegamers.org/dpad if you're a developer and you come from a marginalized background and you want to learn about accessibility.
Amazing. And that is a great place to stop. And thank you so much, Greg. Thanks to the crew. And thanks you, seriously, everybody in chat. You're so wonderful. So thanks for joining us for this special episode. And we're going to be doing these live ones again tomorrow and the next day after that, whichever day that is. Thanks, everyone.
Sure.
Right, bye.